away. And it creates this amazing habitat for wildlife. It's stunning. Today, we're continuing our focus on resistance. Last week, Reverend Doug spoke about resistance through the lens of the Easter story. He spoke about liberation theology, where God or the holy sides with the oppressed and the marginalized. And we explored how liberation theology can also free us from understandings of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus that may have left some of us with deep religious scars. We can resist the ways we dehumanize each other, that we can resist the ways we are dehumanized, liberating ourselves and each other. And what a powerful story we are as we are spinning from today's crucifixions, like the mass shootings that don't stop, laws that remove autonomy over our bodies, and laws that are trying to erase transgender and non-binary people. We can resist the forces of death and destruction that would silence and erase our thoughts and feelings and even our lives. Today, I want to focus on the kind of resistance that happens when we root deeply in who we are, like a girl that won't stop drumming, like the twisting roots of a riparian buffer going deep into the soil, spreading wide into a thick, interconnected mass of root systems that absorb and prevent the floods from washing away our dignity and our worth, and instead renew and revitalize. In our wisdom story today, the drum dream girl was born to drum. It's in her body, it's in her spirit, and it's in her soul. But she lives in a society where girls don't drum, where girls don't create music, and women can't follow their deepest callings. But the girl resists. She turns inward, internally drumming all the time, and she listens to the rhythms of nature and creates music from all that she hears. She watches the male drummers absorbing the power of their music like a riparian buffer gathering the sediments of a flood. She composes her own imaginary music that merges with what she is hearing, and she yearns to bring this out into the real world beyond her imagination. And with her determination to be her true self, even when it can only be in her mind, she is sending roots down deep into the soil of an unstable riverbank, the eroded bank of systemic sexism that would have her deepest calling washed away. Even when everyone around her is telling her no, she resists, and the roots grow deeper and wider, and she inspires her sisters who are also yearning to make music, and now their roots embed into the bank, and each girl's roots twist around the others, creating a bulwark that begins to stabilize the muddy, eroding banks. But her father shuts it down, and they're heartbroken. But by this time, the girl is so secure in who she is that she rises. Even this setback cannot cut back the roots that she has put down, and she continues to resist, and the banks hold, and her father's eyes open, and he realizes how badly she is hurting, and he expands his heart and mind, tentatively anchoring his own roots in the bank of the river that his daughters are stabilizing. And he gets her a teacher, and her teacher's roots begin to anchor in the bank as well. And it grows and grows, and at last the girl doesn't have to limit her true self to her imagination or her private moments. And with her sisters, they can fully embed themselves in the banks of the river. And when the floods come, they absorb their power like a sponge. And the roots are so strong. And the sweet notes of resistance send the nourishing water across a floodplain, the waters of inherent worth and dignity that open a path for all to fully embrace who they are. And the bank of the river becomes more stable, blessing everyone. Not just girls, not just women, but everyone. Because as Martin Luther King said, no one is free until everyone is free. And I'd like to propose this morning that all the ways we are held from our true selves are like the unstable banks of a river being washed away. And when we listen to who we really are, when we live who we really are, despite all the ways that we are told no, we are growing a riparian buffer. Despite all the ways that we may be hurt for still living our truth, our roots are embedding themselves and beginning the work of strengthening and healing the ecosystem that we depend on for life itself. And we're saving ourselves and we're saving others, because the bank can't be restored by only one person, one life. We are saved together. In the last several years, we have witnessed something none of us could have predicted 30 or 40 years ago. And that is the strengthening voice and presence of trans and non-binary and gender-fluid people in our communities. Despite all the ways that our society says no to those outside the gender binary, which is a belief that there are only two genders, these beloved trans and non-binary people have been claiming their lives, proclaiming their stories, and putting down deep roots, the kind that could hold back a flood. And there's a long history of resilience and strength in this community. Who do you think was at Stonewall Inn on that fateful night back in June 28, 1969, when the New York police decided to raid one more gay bar in Manhattan? It was gender nonconformists, like drag queens and butches, who said no. You're not going to sweep us downriver one more bloody time. And they fought back. Over the last 50 years, more LGBTQ people than ever are just living our lives, shedding the shame, getting married, having families, being out and open and honest, being loved by our families. In recent decades, transgender and non-binary people have also been raising hell, claiming who they are with no apology, and public opinion is shifting. And for many in the younger generations, this gender fluidity, it's a no-brainer. It just is. And so here we have another set of roots stabilizing the banks of the river, catching the rich sediment, and ushering in liberation for us all, because none of us are free until all of us are free. But as we know, whenever there's movement forward, what happens? There's a backlash. And we are in a backlash that is threatening to erode the river. With almost 10 years of legalized same-sex marriage, with the definition of family expanding, and trans and non-binary people gaining civil rights, the backlash has grown. There are more anti-LGBTQ bills and more anti-trans bills in state legislators than ever before, and our state is a prime example of what it looks like when elected legislators try to erase a whole group of people. We have several awful bills this year, but one of the ugliest is House Bill 49, which would prosecute physicians who offer gender-affirming care to minors, and would also make it a felony to give referrals for out-of-state gender care to minors. Now, some of us might think, well, what's wrong with waiting until kids are 18, just to be sure that they really know what they want? What if they change their minds? Well, to use a great statement that Doug often uses, well, here's the thing. Puberty can be terribly traumatic for trans kids. A trans boy watches his breasts grow and starts menstruating. A trans girl has to shave and experience the deepening of her voice. So many trans kids harm themselves or experience debilitating mental health issues because they just can't take it. And we're losing too many children. If you start gender-affirming care before puberty, those kids are saved from so much pain and suffering. And all this has been shared in Jeff City over and over and over, and many of our legislators don't care. They don't believe, they reject what parents and children and doctors are telling them. They are intent on eroding that riverbank right out of here, washing away all those kids. And what they are doing, to go back to Easter and liberation theology, is crucifying children. They are crucifying children, using them as pawns to whip up hatred and fear and to stay in power. That's what they're doing. But I want to share with you this morning, and I'm going to stake a claim on this, that I think ultimately they will fail. This is going to backfire. There's going to be a backlash to the backlash. And in fact, there already is a backlash to a backlash. So there may be short-term gain by making political cannon fodder of trans people and those who support them. But ultimately, I predict, and God, I hope I am right, that the riverbank is going to hold. And as those of you who supported the end of, and as those who supported the end of Roe versus Wade are finding out, you really can't erase 50 years of civil rights, can you? And not pay a price. More and more trans and non-binary people, you're claiming your truth. You're living your truth. You're speaking your truth. And the larger culture is changing because of your conviction and your courage. All these dangerous bills are in response to a riverbank that has been stabilized as trans people, non-binary, and gender-fluid people come out and stay out, as drag queens tell stories in libraries, and as the larger society becomes more accepting and embracing of the reality of trans, non-binary, and gender-fluid life. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we're on season 15 of RuPaul's Drag Race. That train has left the station, right? And there's like 8 seasons of Queer Eye for the straight guy. It's not going to stop. That train has left the station. And so many of us have also gotten on the train, and we aren't getting off. The roots have been put down, and it will take more than these hateful trans kill bills to wash away the nourishing soil that these hateful bills would like to destroy. Those roots are cementing together, absorbing any flood, and growing stronger. And there's more. Over 200 corporations have said that these bills are anti-business and anti-family and will impact where they invest their money. I mean, who would have ever thought that companies like Capital One, Cargill, and cargo transporters would be showing up for trans lives? That's banks, big ag, and the trucking industry. And it goes on. Just last month, 4 Missouri senators filibustered HB 49 for 17 hours. And the Senate leader recessed the Senate one day ahead of March break to stop them. And they vowed to keep going when they got back. And because of that promise, some important changes were made to this awful bill, which is still awful. So physicians can make referrals out of state. Patients receiving care before the bill takes effect can continue a care. And there's a 4-year sunset, which means that the bill expires in 4 years unless the Senate vows to renew it. Now, in no way do I want to minimize what's happening because of this bill. Trans lives will be lost. Children will suffer. Parents' hearts will be broken in the face of their child's unavoidable suffering. If you are trans, non-binary, and gender in some way, I am so, so sorry that this is happening to you. Some of us can empathize all too well because we've also been cannon fodder. In 2004, same-sex marriages were used as a wedge issue in this state, and 71% of Missourians voted against our relationships. And after that election, I would walk the grocery stores, looking at people as I went along the aisles, realizing that most of them had voted to cancel my love, to erase my life. And it was awful, just awful. And I vowed to never let their shame become mine, never to turn my back on love. I wasn't sure if I should hope for a change, but that's what we had to do. Because every single root that has been put down by those of us willing to show our true selves and our true values, including those of us who are cisgender, all of these roots are restoring a riparian buffer that is resisting the hatred. The hatred may feel strong, and it is, but it will not have the last word. Because love always wins. Let's recall the words of Maya Angelou. Do you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard because I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard? You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I will rise. So we got a lot of rain this weekend, and the snow melt in the north is making its way down the Mississippi. And in some places, the floodwaters are claiming more of the bank, and fallen trees litter the muddy shoreline, but in other places, the bank holds steady, including in places like this, where the roots are like a sponge gathering up life-sustaining water. This week, I invite you to take some time to reflect on where you have rooted yourself through your own authentic living. Reflect on how your own life has been a form of resistance, absorbing the life-giving power of floods that could have swept you into the river. Reflect on the new life that you have helped to create and sustain for yourselves and for others. And I encourage you to keep doing it. Don't let cynicism and despair stop you. Keep drumming. To use the words of Albert Camus as our closing, the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. May it be so. Amen and blessed be. Thank you. Now we're going to sing a traditional resistance song. We are a gentle, angry people, but not all 6 verses, so we can get to the picnic. Verses 1, 2, 5, and 6. Please rise as you do. So that when we die, we can say all of our energy was dedicated to the noble liberation of the human mind and spirit, beginning with our own. Don't see the extinction, but that's all right. We will extinguish the chalice after the service. The light of truth and meaning cannot be put out. We are keepers of this flame until we meet again. Please be seated for our final musical offering.